Welcome everyone, Questini here with my recommended first campaign list for Total War Warhammer Free. This was really the first video I did on Immortal Empires that got any kind of significant traction. I had covered Total War before, but this is where things exploded. Because when Warhammer Free Immortal Empires came out, I just looked at the list of recommended first campaigns that Creative Assembly recommends, and I just had to laugh at the notion. Because they recommend Karl Franz, they recommend Miao Ying, and they recommend for the High Elves, Tyrion. Now, I don't think Creative Assembly has really put much thought into all of this. I think what they're doing really is they're just looking at each individual game and considering which of the campaigns for those games could be good. Like, they're basically recommending one campaign from Warhammer 1, one from Warhammer 2, and one from Warhammer 3. Actually, if we go into Realms of Chaos, we can see, ignoring that I have a mod that allows me to play Karl Franz in that, we can see that that Zhao Ming actually is recommended for Realms of Chaos, which is a vastly more appropriate choice, as opposed to Miao Ying for Immortal Empires. Now, this may seem like a minor detail, but imagine you're a new player just starting the game and you jump into the campaign thinking that Miao Ying, or worse, Karl Franz, is a really good campaign to play as a beginner. It is not. It's similar to what happened when Realms of Chaos launched, where Katrin was recommended as the first campaign. Katrin is one of the worst campaigns to play in the game, in either Realms of Chaos or Immortal Empires. There's no way around that. So in this video, I am going to explore that. Specifically, I will focus on campaigns that do not require DLC in order to play, because if you're a new player, you're probably not going to own DLC. I will, however, go with the assumption that people doing so are going to have the games. That is the underlying assumption that I'm going to go with. I understand that you can play Immortal Empires without owning Warhammer 1 and 2, but I do feel that it is important to draw a line somewhere with respect to that. And I'm not just going to draw the line on just owning Warhammer Free. Though I will try and balance it out between the free games. Though, to be fair, it's probably going to end up being more focused on Warhammer 2 than anything else. But there are certainly some campaigns in Warhammer Free that are worth it. Not Karl Franz. Let me just put it like this. If you're starting a new campaign and you aren't necessarily very experienced, Karl Franz is genuinely one of the worst campaigns in the game. Maybe he won't be after Thrones of Decay. It would be great if this list actually matched reality after Thrones of Decay. But, you know, I don't understand it with Miao Ying. You might think, oh, she's got ammunition, it would be good. But really, let me put it bluntly, there's much better choices for Grand Cafe. Starting out with Be'lakor as more of an honorable mention as opposed to actually being on the list. But Be'lakor is a really good campaign to play if you're trying to get used to the ideas of Warhammer Free. Or it's rather a very easy campaign in a fairly safe starting situation. You have Albion, which is a nightmare to invade for anyone. You'll gain one vassal very quickly through taking over this dark fortress, and then you can get a second vassal by subjugating the Sightless. So you're going to have two vassals. Each of them, if you're playing on any kind of real difficulty, will be able to produce at least a full stack of troops. So you've got 2 stacks of troops and the defenders of the dark fortress itself for anyone that's going to be looking to attack you to overcome. Effectively, this island is as impregnable as any position on the campaign map. This gives you the flexibility to deal with anything that might be coming your way, and if you just want a fairly chill campaign, Be'lakor is really the way to go. There's not much more to say than that. Warriors of Chaos are a great race. They have the unit customization that comes from the Warband upgrade system, which is fairly fantastic as a system, and I wish it was available for more races rather than just Warriors of Chaos. Now, Be'lakor, effectively, even if you don't own Champions of Chaos or Warriors of Chaos, you still have access to undivided Chaos units, and you have access to the demonic units. So things like Bloodletters, Plague Bearers, Demonettes, Blue Horrors, Pink Horrors, you will get access to them by playing this campaign. And the thing that sets Be'lakor apart is every other Warrior of Chaos Legendary Lord has a limit on gifted units. You don't have a limit on gifted units per army. So if you want to make an entire army with Hell Cannons and Dragon Ogre Shragoffs, you can do so as Be'lakor. There is a significant level of power that and a significant safety net that comes with that as well. It also helps that the Warriors of Chaos are one of the most powerful races in the game. Here's the thing though on why this is more of an honorable mention as opposed to being on the list itself. While there's plenty of reasons for someone that is not necessarily familiar with the game mechanics to jump into this campaign, and if you're playing Warhammer 3, play the tutorial campaign, it explains a lot about the basics. Then play Be'lakor, it is a good learning experience on any difficulty that you choose. You can jump in this campaign on Legendary, even if you're relatively new to Warhammer, and you will do relatively well. But here's the issue, the catch. Warriors of Chaos are not a great learning tool. There is a significant buffer, but it's also going to be a campaign situation in which you're very rarely going to be at risk of losing your campaign. There are races in which you screw up, you can lose your campaign or you'll go bankrupt. Warriors of Chaos are a relatively safe race to play in a lot of ways. It is very, very hard to lose a campaign as Warriors of Chaos. Simple as that. And add to that Be'lakor, well, Be'lakor being Be'lakor, suffice to say, he is very substantial as a legendary lord. So it's kind of like, one way I would compare the Warriors of Chaos to would be the Huns in Age of Empires 2. Great race to play, a lot of variety, all that, but not really the race that you would recommend for someone that's starting the game, because in that particular case, you don't have to build houses for the Huns, because they have the housing population, and that's actually very important for everyone else. In the case of Warriors of Chaos, you don't have to defend minor settlements, you don't have to care about defense at all in your initial situation, because your vassals will deal with that. So you're never really at risk, and if there's no risk, there's no learning experience, you will not really get this kind of experience in any other campaign in the game. You can vassalize in other campaigns at certain points, but you will not have the vassalization power that the Warriors of Chaos start with. That's why I can't fully recommend it, even if there's a lot of things to like about this campaign. It is available to everyone that plays Immortal Empires. And number 5 is Isabella von Carstein, who also has Vlad von Carstein as a legendary hero available in her campaign. You can also just play Vlad as well. I mean, Vlad is always going to be the faction leader. The lord you pick, however, will be the legendary lord, with the other one being a legendary hero that gets significant bonuses when you attach to the army. But why Isabella as opposed to Vlad? Well, it comes down to faction effects. She gets the free hero capacity to vampires, which is actually incredibly powerful. Also, she gets 25 weapon strength for embedded vampire heroes in her campaign. Yeah, that is a ridiculous level of power. And you can recruit vampires through the Mausoleum of the Mad Count in Castle Drakenhof. So you'll be running around with 5 vampires, or you can run around with 5 vampires from very, very early on in your campaign if you're playing as Isabella. The power level available here is absurd. This is certainly a melee-centric faction, and it is a hero-centric faction. The level of power that the Vampire Counts has is astronomical. The one downside to the Vampire Counts is that, I'll be honest, they're not really my favorite to play. I mean, they're good, they work, but not having range units kind of is a downside as I see it. And also just some other things as well that does limit the enjoyment I personally do have when playing them. But make no mistake, the Vampire Counts are a really powerful race, and Vlad and Isabella are the most fun and interesting legendary lords to play of the Vampire Counts. You have Manfred, you can go with, though who the hell would want to play Manfred in their right mind? And you can also go for Gorst. Gorst works very well with the zombies, but honestly the zombie campaign playstyle is not particularly interesting from a perspective. So it comes down to Vlad and Isabella. You start in this corner surrounded by Zufbar and the Empire. The dwarves can give you a decent challenge, especially if they start throwing full stacks against you, but the Empire is just meat on the menu. I guess that is the downside that you do have with this particular campaign. You can build a vast and powerful empire, and you will have to take some risks during this campaign. There are some really powerful legendary lords in the empire. Drika, Festus, Azag, potentially, dependent on how the campaign swings in his favor or not. Typically, when I play a campaign as Vlad, I may end up actually having to deal with Azag being the biggest problem, believe it or not. But you do have the power in this campaign. You have a substantial level of power. You have all the tools you need. But you're in kind of position where a lot of the factions do hate you. But you can also make them like you. Their diplomacy is actually quite viable for the vampire counts with quite a lot of races. They do have some aversion towards you, but it's not such a critical level of aversion that you can't make it work. So this tool can be... so this particular campaign can be very useful as a learning experience for a lot of people to get used to using heroes properly, to use diplomacy properly in a campaign, make that dynamic play out well. That's what I'd recommend with it. There's also a mod that, by the way, allows you to play as Vlad and just become the Elector Count or become the Emperor. It does become quite hilarious with respect to that. But really fun campaign, really interesting campaign. The best vampire campaign or the best undead campaign in the entire game. Yes, higher than the Tomb Kings, for which a lot of people do have a hard on. Look, Tomb Kings, when they came out in Warhammer 2, one thing. Warhammer 3, they haven't aged quite as gracefully as you might have expected. By the way, Vlad and Isabella from Warhammer 1 into Warhammer 3. Great campaign, great lords, great choice. At number 4, we have Queek Headtaker of the Skaven from Warhammer 2. One of the baseline legendary lords of the Skaven, and who has actually stayed relevant throughout all of this time. One of the reasons he stayed relevant is because Queek is bloody terrifying to face on the battlefield. Seriously, you've seen this guy? You've seen his damage? Yeah, he's crazy. He's no snitch, but Jesus, does this guy hit like a truck in battle. And he's got various benefits to make him even scarier in his campaign. So he's a good fighter. On top of that, he gets a hero capacity +2 for chieftains. Beyond that, his faction effects aren't necessarily that powerful, but here's the thing. Queek doesn't need to be special, except his melee capability, which does make him special. But what is important about Queek is the following thing. While he is not really that special when it comes to his skill line or his faction effects or anything like that, he's just a generic legendary lord for the Skaven. And the Skaven are a really good race. What sets Queek apart from other legendary lords of the Skaven is the fact that Queek actually has a good starting position. Unlike Ikakla, unlike Frot, unlike Tretch, he actually has a good starting position. Skrulk, it's kind of 50-50, depends on how things develop. Can go really badly, can go really well. But in Queek's campaign, your starting position will lend itself to a great campaign experience. So if you want to learn how to play a campaign of a race that's a bit unique because they don't generate money in the same way, in the sense that all of their structures generate some money and it comes down to the modifiers from things like arcane generators, then Queek is a really solid campaign to actually go for. His starting position is solid, it's safe, it's secure. You won't be facing any real opponent until significantly later on in the campaign. Or Forik can show up and ruin your day, though he's probably going to have to go for Scarbrand first before he comes deal with you, which is gonna take him some time. Outside of that, outside of Forik, there's no real opposition in your campaign. Like, just consider this campaign situation. Oh yeah, you have Emmerich over here. Emmerich can be an issue. Maybe. Emmerich is likely going to end up at war with Drazov, who, whatever. Maybe Warzag, but point is, safe, solid, reliable Queek. That's how I describe it. There's nothing more to it, nothing more to understand, nothing more to explain about this particular legendary lord. He just works. He just works very well. And he works very well even if you're a veteran player. Well, I think Snitch is a much better campaign. I can't quite say the same about Claw and Fraught. I mean, they have more power. Just having more power doesn't necessarily make for a better campaign. As learning experience, this is great. Get used to more unique campaign mechanics than just the generic ones many other races do have. In third position, we have Grimgor, who in a lot of ways is one of the best legendary lords in the game. And also a fairly straightforward campaign from which people can learn quite a lot about fighting and looting. Quite seriously, that's what you're going to be doing in this campaign. You will be fighting, you will be looting, and you will be smashing everything and everyone that stands in your path. Just consider this, how powerful Grimgor is as a legendary lord, and the fact that he's not the recommended campaign is absolutely absurd. Like, I can agree with some decisions Creative Assembly made, but not including Grimgor as a recommended campaign. It's like, what exactly? What game are you playing there, Creative Assembly? Like, I'll just make this example. Legend of Total War content creator, one of the biggest Total War channels. In fact, probably the biggest exclusive Total War channel, because like other channels may focus on Total War, they may focus on other games as well that are bigger than him. Legend focuses almost exclusively on Total War. He does disaster battles. And in those disaster battles, do you know what the biggest threat that a lot of people do face is? Is this guy. There's a reason behind that. There's a reason why Grimgor is such a biblical apocalyptic threat on the campaign in the hands of the AI if you're playing on a higher difficulty or even a lower difficulty. Suffice to say, Grimgor has a relatively safe starting position, a good army, access to a good amount of heroes, not quite as much as Isabella and Vlad, but still a decent amount of heroes, and a really, really powerful economy that's based on fighting and looting. The sheer level of power that you will gain playing a campaign as the Greenskins is astronomical. It's not even funny to think about the sheer breadth, sheer variety of heroes that you have access to as the Greenskins. Lore choices are not necessarily that great, but if you're in a campaign where you get taught a lot about how playing aggressively is important, then make no mistake, it is. This is the key to a campaign that people need to understand. If you want to play campaign well, you got to get used to the idea that you're going to be fighting aggressively. That is a key element to succeeding in a campaign in an effective fashion. And that is what Grimgor and the Greenskins do excel at. The reason they excel at that is because they get more money from post-battle loot than many other races. It's not even a joke, I'm not exaggerating on this. You will gain more post-battle loot, more money from looting and sacking settlements than the vast majority of races in the entire game. And that is no exaggeration at all. But what makes Grimgor stand out? Well, he's got the safest starting position of all the Greenskin legendary lords. He's got the tier 2 starting settlement, so does Skarsnik, but please, let's not make any mistake on this. Grimgor eats Skarsnik for lunch. He has the ability of recruiting Black Orc big bosses in all his provinces. He gets that useful campaign movement range. His walls have a chance to contain Black Orcs. His skill line increases his Black Orc big boss capacity by 2, and he starts with 1, so you will be running around with 3 very early on in your campaign. These guys are fairly durable, and Grimgor does one thing exceptionally well. He fights so well. That's the point about my Legend discussion. Whenever Legend fights Grimgor, and obviously Legend knows how to win, but whenever he fights Grimgor, he makes it his priority to kill or eliminate Grimgor. That's the kind of legendary lord we're talking about. He is genuinely one of the scariest duelists in the entire game. And what makes Grimgor so scary isn't the fact that he personally is so powerful. There are some lords who would defeat him hands down in a melee fight. For instance, we can think of Malice Darkblade, or maybe even Snitch. But Grimgor doesn't come alone. No, he brings his buddy. You get a Wa, you declare a Wa, you get all the armies of a Wa. So your armies get doubled. You get a lot of meat to throw into the fodder, so Grimgor can do his Grimgor thing. You get an enormous amount of growth, control. Rebellions aren't a thing in a Greenskin campaign, ever. You get such a high level of control and growth, you'll be growing exponentially. Your structures are pretty damn cheap in a lot of ways. Main settlement buildings, minor settlement buildings, it doesn't matter. Higher settlement buildings, higher level structures, they may be more expensive, but even so, not to the point of absolute ridiculousness, which it can happen in some other campaigns. And I emphasize this point, Greenskins, they don't excel at being passive. They don't excel at defense. They excel at aggression. So the value of this particular campaign is to teach a player how to be aggressive and how to succeed at being aggressive, which is not necessarily something you can say about a lot of campaigns. Some campaigns are more balanced. Some do favor a more defense-oriented playstyle, or very few do favor of that. Favor a purely defensive playstyle, but elves primarily. But Greenskins, they're all about aggression. You don't care if your entire economy is in the red as long as you have enough money for the next turn, because if you have that and you end the turn without going bankrupt, well, you can fight the battle next turn and replenish your coffers. That's the way the Greenskin economy works. And their armies, their basic goblin archers, while they don't seem so great on paper, well, there's a lot of benefits in this research tree that do give those goblin archers an enormous level of freaking power. Leadership, physical resistance, upkeep benefits, armor, vanguard deployment, and more upkeep. Grimgor embodies some of the best traits of the Greenskins, without resorting to special mechanics like Grom does. Grom has a lot of power, but Grom also suffers from his starting position. Very unique campaign, very interesting campaign with Grom the Paunch. I vastly prefer playing Grimgor myself. That's where I stand. So, third campaign I'd recommend on this list, number 3. And number 2, though, easily could be number 1, with the exception of a couple of things, but is Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon of Cathay. It is hilarious that his sister is recommended for Immortal Empires, but he is recommended for Realms of Chaos. Hilariously, it might actually be the exact opposite for Realms of Chaos, though Zhao Ming does best in both of those campaigns anyway, or can do very well in both those campaigns. Cathay is just a really powerful race. Their basic military unit, the warriors, are heavily armored units. They might not have the damage capability of some other melee units, but they have the durability to withstand a lot of things. Cathay is reliant on melee holding the line and range doing all of the work, because they do have powerful ranged units as well. And you have freaking dragons leading your armies. What more is there to say? Cathay is what the Empire wishes it would be. No, seriously, it is what the Empire wishes it would be. There's only a couple of things the Empire does well, but Cathay is very similar in a lot of ways to what the Empire should be. A versatile race with a powerful unit roster with plenty of options, be it melee, basic melee and ranged options being really good, solid cavalry choices with Jade Lancers and Great Longman Riders giving you the mobility of flying cavalry units, though cavalry units handle pretty badly nowadays. Wish they improved that. They have improved cavalry on ground, but not in the air. Powerful artillery that's more easily accessible than the Empire. Yeah, imagine having grand cannons at tier 3 looking at you, the Empire. That's one of the reasons the Empire sucks, by the way. Having magic users available from tier 3, and some really powerful units later on, including flying Hellstorm rocket batteries and Hellstorm rocket batteries on the ground as well. Great choices, great options. Great level of power, good economy, great auto-resolve, good options. There's nothing really bad to say about Cathay with the exception of 2 things. The Compass is kind of a meaningless system that doesn't really offer all that much to a campaign, and, well, to put it mildly, or to put it simply, the entire system of Or to put it simply, the lack of a melee hero casualty replenishment is not that great. Casualty replenishment is the Achilles heel of Cathay. It's the one area where the Empire is actually better than Cathay, but Cathay does have a good level of power. You just may be fighting more battles manually in order to reduce your casualties, so because you have crap casualty replenishment. And yes, the Great Bastion helps, but 10% is just not good enough, really, to deal with the issues in the campaign. 10% is very close to what the hero casualty replenishment would offer anyway, at level 1, so that's how bad the compass is. Now, if it was 20% or 30% if you maxed out this meter, like 10% when you're at the middle point, that might be a different discussion. But no, it's 10% maximum. Yeah, CA doesn't know how to do some racial balancing in the game, and people defend this kind of crap. But look, issues aside, you can't do wrong with Cathay. Cathay has a great roster, it has a simple roster, it has good choices from the beginning of the campaign, great choices in the late game, good customization of your economy. You can go yin, you can go yang. I kind of wish they had nerfed going full yin or yang, but they did. But you do have choices that other races would dream of. And this is a great race if you're starting out. Cathay is also one of the best learning areas in the entire game. Because, yes, you have threats like Snitch and Lokir who are powerful lords. But you also have a variety of climates to deal with, variety of terrain types, variety of enemies, all within this nice little sandbox that is Cathay and Immortal Empires. It's kind of hilarious. Cathay and Realms of Chaos actually sucks as an area. Cathay and Immortal Empires is genuinely one of the best damn areas in the entire game. So you want to learn the game, I would strongly recommend playing a campaign in Cathay. Well, I'm not sure I would recommend Lokir or Snitch as starting campaigns for anyone that's just brand new. Once you've gotten some experience under your belt, yeah, there's a lot of learning experience there. Or maybe you can play Village. Or if you really want to clench your teeth, play Zaytan. You'll be going for the learning experience. Yeah, I'll tell you what the experience is playing as Zaytan. You see this big boy that I talked about? He's right next to you. He'll be coming for you when you're playing as Zaytan. That's your learning experience. Grimgor is your teacher. You will learn from him. Learn how to be squashed. But you will be learning some things from Grimgor. But in all honesty, like Zhao Ming is a really great campaign. Powerful lord, good effects, good skill line, good faction effects. He gets armor for all his melee units, so that improves his auto resolve, that increases the durability. He gets recruit rank for Alchemist, he improves the caravan capacity. He has that pointless benefit from Ogre Mercenaries, which would have been great in Warhammer 2, a Ogre Mercenary system, but not so great in Warhammer 3, and they need to overhaul that. He does get an Ogre Diplomacy benefit, funnily enough. He does get Desert Armor for his own army, and he does get Desert Weapons. He's a really great lord. He's more melee focused than range focused, but yeah, Cathay does work pretty well, even with the melee army. There's a reason why I consider him much better to play than Miao Ying. Like, Miao Ying, it's kind of sad, actually, for her. Like, Creative Assembly was pushing her really hard in the trailers pre-release. I mean, she is in the Cathay reveal trailer. She's, like, supposed to be the baseline legendary lord for Cathay, but she's genuinely the worst campaign for Cathay in the game at the moment. The most forgettable one, too. The least interesting campaign. Oh, I get more ammunition for range units. Compared to the options that Zhao Ming and Yan Bo have, geez, it's not even a contest. It's not even funny. Though Miao Ying is great to confederate, that's another thing. You'll find it easier to confederate Miao Ying than you will Zhao Ming. That's another reason you should play him if you want to play a Cathay campaign and if you want to learn something, because, yeah. Let me give you this idea. If you're playing on Legendary difficulty or any difficulty in general, do you know what the biggest threat is in Cathay if you decide to go at war with them? It ain't Miao Ying or Yan Bo. No, it's Zhao Ming. Zhao Ming, like, I invaded Cathay as the Changeling. He fought me to a standstill. He didn't win. He couldn't win. I was playing the Changeling. But he just kept creating an army, throwing it against me, then another one, and another one. It's like, I don't think I've ever fought a dozen stacks, one after another, except with the exception of an endgame crisis when facing one single faction. Even when invading fricking Ulfwan. That's the power of Zhao Ming in a nutshell in a campaign. He is ridiculous, and you have that power at your disposal. So get used to balancing cafe and harmony, because the power is there, it is available. It's ridiculous what cafe can achieve in a campaign. Maybe get the mod that helps your replenishment, that would improve the experience. Maybe an auto-resolve mod as well. Yeah, mods can improve the experience, but remember, all the things that I'm saying in this video, they're based on the assumption that you're playing vanilla. So mods can help by making it based on vanilla. So highly recommend you play Zhao Ming. Warhammer free campaign. Him and Be'lakor. The only two campaigns I would highly recommend from Warhammer free. Yes, there are the cast dwarves. I won't dispute that. But cast dwarves are very special. People talk about how overpowered they are. I'm going to say it bluntly. Anyone who thinks the cast dwarves are overpowered on the campaign map, no. Dark elves are. Grimgor is. Greenskins are. Skaven can be. Cast dwarves have to work for it. They have some weaknesses, some glaring deficiencies, actually. Now, it's not bad. You can deal with them. That's what's a great race. That race that has some weaknesses that you can address. But there are some races that just don't have those weaknesses in a campaign. So yeah, cast dwarves are really overpowered, aren't they? Not really. And at number 1 is Tyrion. Well, I guess Creative Assembly got 2 out of 3 wrong, but they did get the most important of them right. Tyrion has been a powerhouse ever since he was introduced in Warhammer 2. Now look, my perspective about Warhammer 3 is I think it's the best Total War Warhammer game that's been developed by Creative Assembly. However, as I have stated before, and I'll state again, I don't necessarily think that the reason behind that comes down to decisions that Creative Assembly made for Warhammer 3. Rather, it came down to decisions, to developments that they had made in their previous games, including Warhammer 2. Quite a lot of the campaigns from Warhammer 2, Dark Elves, High Elves, other things, have aged very well in the series, in both Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3. Tyrion has been a great campaign ever since he was introduced. There are other great High Elven campaigns, and while Tyrion doesn't have the most special campaign, Alfarian, Alifanar, and even Alariel have more special campaigns, he does have a relatively simple playstyle, but he does have a great playstyle at the same time. He has an incredibly safe starting position here in southern Ulthuan. He doesn't even need to control the entirety of Ulthuan to achieve his campaign objectives. Though of course ideally he would, but that's not really what's important. And you have a fairly straightforward campaign. Take as much of Ulthuan as you want or need, then go deal with Morathi, and then go put an end to Malekith. That is your campaign objective for a short campaign. Then you can worry about either taking control of Ulthuan or allying the factions that will take control of Ulthuan, namely Alariel and Alfarian. Even if you don't own their DLCs, which will prevent you from confederating them, you can still achieve campaign victory when military alliances. And those military alliances are very viable very, very quickly. Because, well, Alariel and Alfarian and Tyrion form one of the most formidable blocks, power blocks, on the entire campaign map. Other races may be far more divided. The High Elves are very unified. With the exception of Cathay, but that is the exception, not the rule. So High Elves are fairly unified, and Tyrion does embody some of the best of the High Elves. He has diplomatic relations with them, a recruitment duration of -1 for infantry and cavalry units, which, yes, it does apply, does apply to units in unfavorable climate. So if you want to recruit units in climate that's not necessarily the best, you can do so in a single turn as opposed to having to wait 2 turns. Furthermore, Tyrion has a set of really powerful items. Between the dragon armor that makes him nigh unkillable with the physical resistance and water save, Sunfang, which does a significant amount of damage and can even do some AoE damage. And the Heart of Avalorn, which makes it so that even when his HP does drop, he'll just recover it very, very quickly. Yeah, this guy is really hard to kill. Genuinely, you can win a campaign against Tyrion, but never be able to kill him in a straight 1v1 fight. You might have to auto-resolve to actually manage to kill him on the campaign map. Or kill him in a settlement, or defeat him in a settlement, not kill him, because good luck killing him even in a settlement. That is how powerful Tyrion is. A simple campaign, but very well designed. And then you have the Majesty of Ulthuan, and oh boy. While the Bloodline of Anarion is not something to sneeze at with all the combat benefits that this gives Tyrion, Tyrion is already mighty enough in battle as is. What you want to go is for the Majesty of Ulthuan, because this gives you things like Unifier, improving the income in the province, control diplomatic relations. Having extra control is actually quite useful. The item set bonus is actually quite useful combined with Unifier, because High Elves do generate more money in their economy if they do achieve 100 control in their provinces. It's not quite on the same level as Alariel, who can increase 1 control for every handmaiden she has, and she'll get more of those than anyone else. Then he can also reduce global recruitment duration by 1, and increase global duration capacity by 2, and reduce the upkeep of all of his armies by 10%. That is enormous. Tyrion does well on his own, he does well in the early game, and he has enormous scalability in the late game. Alariel can have very great scalability, but you're gonna have to work for it. She will do better than Tyrion if you do work for it, but you're gonna have to put in effort. And you're just one step away from losing some of those benefits by losing a territory in Ulthuan. That's kind of the annoying thing about Alariel. You have to unify Ulthuan, make sure it's all under High Elven control, and keep it that way, which can prove to be annoying, suffice to say. But regardless, Tyrion does work. He works brilliantly. He has a minus 50% upkeep for the basic High Elven units, which form the core of the High Elven armies. So regardless of what you're doing with Tyrion, it's really hard to screw up. You have a campaign where diplomacy doesn't matter. You have enemies to fight. You will have to travel to distant shores in order to achieve your campaign objectives, while also securing your homeland. Not that it needs necessarily a huge amount of securing once you move past the early stage of it. Really great campaign, really great learning tool. You can't do wrong playing a Tyrion campaign, even with no DLC whatsoever purchased for the High Elves. Is a fantastic campaign. I do prefer Leaf on R. I think Alariel has more scalability, but there's a reason why Tyrion has been played time and time again by many people ever since Warhammer 2 came out. He just has that power that very few lords in this game has. And he's simple, easy to understand, easy to comprehend, easy to gain mastery over his strengths. Costin here, signing out. If you do enjoy my content, check out my PayPal and Patreon, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.